Mia and I met in high school. We were those couples everyone envied. Young, in love, and inseparable. We married right after college, me at 23, and she was 22. Looking back, it all seemed so easy. I had a promising career as a lawyer. My firm was growing fast, and I had everything figured out. Mia. She was my partner in everything. I gave her a life of comfort, one she never had to worry about. Money was never an issue for her, and I made sure she didn't have to lift a finger. Our house was always filled with her favorite things. The fridge was stocked with gourmet food, her closet overflowed with designer clothes, and we had cleaners, nannies, anything she wanted. I made sure she lived a life of leisure. In return, she was an amazing wife. Beautiful, charming, and always graceful at social events. She managed the household effortlessly, making everything look easy. She never complained. Never asked for anything more than what I gave her. For 10 years, I thought we were happy. I thought we were solid. Our life looked perfect from the outside, and for the most part, I believed it was. But now, I realize how wrong I was. Mia wasn't the woman I thought she was. She never cared about me the way I cared about her. She didn't care about our life, about the years we spent building something together. She cared about the status and security I could provide. She took full advantage of my focus on work, and while I was away building my career, she was quietly pursuing her own selfish desires. Looking back, I see how I was blind to everything. I was so consumed by my work, so confident that everything was fine, that I didn't notice the cracks. For our 5th anniversary, I planned a trip to Italy, something I thought would be special. A getaway to celebrate our love. I thought it would be the perfect way to reconnect, to remind us both of what we had. But what happened during that trip was nothing short of a wake-up call. What began as a romantic vacation turned into a nightmare, exposing the truth about Mia and the lies that had been building up for years. The first day in Milan felt magical. The city was beautiful, full of history and energy. I had booked a charming boutique hotel with a perfect view of the Duomo. Everything was set up for a romantic anniversary celebration. But the evening started to go wrong before it even began. We had planned to go to a rooftop restaurant for dinner. But just before we were about to leave, I got an urgent call from one of my clients. It was one of those situations I couldn't ignore. I told Mia to go ahead without me while I quickly handled the issue. I thought it would only take a few minutes, but the call dragged on for over an hour. By the time I finished, I was frustrated. I rushed upstairs to meet her, but when I arrived at the restaurant's terrace, I froze. There was Mia, laughing and chatting with a man I didn't know. His dark hair was slicked back, and he seemed completely comfortable with her. They were so engrossed in their conversation, they didn't even notice me at first. When he saw me, he stood up, smiling with a certain arrogance. He extended his hand and introduced himself as Marco. "Sorry to keep your lovely wife company," he said smoothly. "She was dining alone, so I thought I'd keep her entertained until you arrived." I sat down with a stiff smile, trying to hold back the jealousy and suspicion that started bubbling up. Marco was charming, too charming. I couldn't shake the feeling that there was more going on here than just a friendly dinner companion. After he left, Mia seemed so amused by the whole situation, as if it was all some sort of joke. She even told me that Marco had stubbornly refused to leave, despite her attempts to send him away. Her eyes sparkled with excitement as she relayed the story. But something about the way she was acting, it was like she was enjoying the attention. I noticed she kept checking her phone throughout the night, smiling at whatever she was reading. My gut twisted, but I tried to brush it off. I wanted to focus on our evening, but that feeling of unease wouldn't leave me. The next morning, Mia was unusually eager to go to a local street market. Normally, she would have been happy to relax and take her time, but she was practically pulling me out the door. As we walked through the market, I stepped aside to take a quick business call. When I finished, I looked around, expecting to see Mia beside me, but she was gone. I called her name, but there was no response. I tried texting her, then called her cell, straight to voicemail. I started to get annoyed. It wasn't like her to disappear like that. After about 20 minutes, she finally picked up. She told me she had to run back to the hotel urgently, something about needing the restroom. I tried to brush it off, but something didn't sit right. She assured me she'd be back soon. I waited, pacing, but after a while, I couldn't stand it anymore. I decided to head back myself. I called her again, but her phone went straight to voicemail. When I finally made it to the hotel, Mia still wasn't there. Now I was angry. I called her again. This time, she answered with a cheerful laugh, saying she got distracted window shopping and had lost track of time. She added that her phone was about to die and promised she'd be there soon. I was furious, but I held it in. I went back to the market, looking for her, but she was nowhere to be found. At that point, I needed a drink. I went to a nearby bar to calm down. The bartender, a friendly woman with short blonde hair, listened as I vented about my wife disappearing on me. She was kind, but it didn't make me feel any better. Just as I was finishing my drink, I glanced out the window. There was Mia, kissing Marco. I felt my blood run cold. They were standing by a car, Marco leaning in to kiss her, and then they got in and drove off. I didn't think, I just acted. I stormed out of the bar, my heart racing. As I ran down the street, I saw Mia turn, and when she saw me, she didn't even look surprised. She just smiled. "I was going to tell you," she said, her voice almost mocking. "Marco and I are in love. He understands me in ways you never did. We're going to start a new life together in Paris. I'm leaving you." I stood there, stunned. A crowd began to gather around us, and Mia didn't care. She went on about how Marco was going to take her shopping, take her to fancy restaurants, and they'd spend their days in Parisian cafes. She didn't even flinch at the destruction she was causing. The last 5 years of our life together meant nothing to her. I was nothing to her. I don't remember much of what happened after that. I felt something inside me snap. My rage was blinding. I stormed back to the hotel, took the stairs 2 at a time, and when I burst into our suite, I didn't stop. I tore through the room, throwing her clothes and belongings over the balcony, not caring where they landed. Her expensive dresses fluttered down like discarded scraps. Perfume bottles smashed. A laptop bag hit the pavement with a sickening thud. I didn't stop until everything she brought with her was gone, scattered in pieces on the street below. The crowd below shouted, but I couldn't hear them. I was too consumed by rage and betrayal. When I finally stopped, I collapsed onto the bed, breathing heavily. I looked out the window at the gathering crowd below, trying to process what had just happened. Mia, the woman I had trusted, the woman I had loved for so many years, had just walked out of my life, leaving me for a man she barely knew. And I couldn't do anything about it. The hours that followed were a blur. I stayed in the hotel room, numb. I couldn't wrap my mind around the events of the day. Mia, my wife, my partner for the past decade, had just left me for another man. She had discarded everything we had built, everything we shared, without a second thought. It was supposed to be our anniversary, a moment to celebrate everything we had. Instead, it was the day everything fell apart. I spent the evening lying on the bed, staring at the ceiling. The silence was suffocating. I had no idea what to do next. There were no calls from Mia, no apologies. The hotel manager didn't ask questions, probably just happy to let it all slide. It felt like I had been punched in the gut. Everything I had worked for, everything I had given her, it all meant nothing. I woke up late the next morning, physically exhausted but emotionally drained. For a moment, everything seemed normal, until reality came crashing back. Mia was gone. She wasn't in Paris with Marco. She had no plans to return to me. She had abandoned me, and now I was just a man left alone in a foreign city. But I wasn't going to let her destroy me. I had spent the past 15 years treating Mia like royalty. I had provided for her, loved her, and given her everything she wanted. I wasn't going to let one cruel act, one betrayal, ruin this trip. It was my time now. I got ready carefully. I shaved, put on my best suit, and headed out into Milan. I walked into the same bar where I had met the bartender the night before. Her name was Sophia, and I remembered her kindness. She was cute, funny, and she listened to me when I needed someone. As soon as I walked in, she noticed me immediately. Her eyes took in my sharp outfit, and she flashed me a flirtatious smile. I asked if she'd like to show me around the city, just as a friend, nothing serious. She laughed, clearly enjoying the attention. "I'd love to," she said, her hazel eyes sparkling. Sophia and I spent the next several hours together. She took me to the Duomo, showed me some of her favorite hidden gems in Milan, and shared stories about her life. We talked about art, music, and culture. There was no pressure, no expectations. It felt good to have someone to talk to who wasn't wrapped up in lies and betrayal. Later in the day, as we sat beside a fountain, the atmosphere shifted. The golden light from the setting sun bathed everything in a warm glow, and we found ourselves sitting closer. Sophia's hand brushed against mine, and it felt natural. We talked about love and life, how things don't always turn out the way you expect. When she gently squeezed my hand, I couldn't help myself. I leaned in and kissed her, slowly at first. She hesitated, then kissed me back, soft and sweet. For the first time in a long while, I felt like I could breathe again. There was no anger, no betrayal, just a moment of connection. The rest of the trip went by in a blur. Sophia and I spent our days exploring the city, talking, and enjoying each other's company. It wasn't the same as being with Mia, but it was a reminder that life could still have joy, even after everything that had happened. Sophia showed me that it was possible to find happiness again, even in the most unexpected places. By the time I had to return home, I wasn't the same person who had left. The man who had been betrayed, who had been left heartbroken, had been replaced by someone stronger. I said goodbye to Sophia with a promise to stay in touch. We parted on good terms. No drama, no expectations, just two people who had shared a brief but meaningful time together. 4 months passed. Life had settled into a new rhythm. I threw myself into my law practice, working long hours to distract myself from the painful memories of Mia's betrayal. The idea of her, of us, seemed so far away now. Every time I thought of her, I reminded myself of the freedom I had gained from her departure. No more pretending everything was fine when it wasn't. I was finally free to focus on myself. Then one night, around 10 p.m., the doorbell rang. I was about to turn in for the night, worn out from a long day at the office. I went to the window, expecting maybe a delivery or a neighbor. But what I saw shocked me. There, standing on my front porch, was Mia. For a moment, I just stood there, unsure if I was seeing things. Her face was gaunt, worn from the months that had passed since our last encounter. She was wrapped in a thick coat, trying to shield herself from the cold. Tears brimmed in her eyes, and she seemed so small, so fragile compared to the woman I had known. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. After everything, Mia thought she could just show up at my door, begging for forgiveness. I opened the door, glaring at her, unable to hide the contempt I felt. "Please," she pleaded, her voice trembling. "Let me stay here. I have nowhere else to go." I couldn't believe her audacity. "So, the grand life with Marco didn't work out, huh?" I spat. "Not so easy to live in luxury when the man you left me for grows tired of you. No more endless shopping trips, no more Parisian cafes." Mia tried to explain, her words faltering as she described how Marco had cast her aside. She spent months living on friends' couches, broke and broken, until she ended up on my doorstep. She was desperate. "I was wrong," she said. "We meant too much to each other. Can't we start fresh? I'm so sorry." I didn't flinch. There was no sympathy left in me. I didn't care about her crocodile tears. She had made her choice. She had thrown me away for a life of luxury, and now she was back when it all fell apart. I took the divorce papers, shoved them in her face, and said, "We already started fresh. You walked away from me. Don't come crawling back when things get tough." I slammed the door shut, not looking back. For the first time in months, I felt at peace. The anger, the hurt, it all faded as I sat down in the silence. Mia was gone, and I had moved on. I had rebuilt my life without her, and I wasn't about to let her destroy that again. If you found this story relatable, or if you want more stories that will keep you hooked, make sure to subscribe to the channel. You'll get updates on all the latest posts, and I promise you won't want to miss the next one.